Welcome back. While the Biden administration faces the prospect of an expanded conflict involving Russia and China, former Bush administration officials are looking back at the evolution of U.S. relations with both of those adversaries. Stephen Hadley was President George W. Bush's national security advisor. He's got this terrific new book, I'm going to call it a reference book, that looks at how foreign policy transitions from one administration to the next, how it works, and the mentions that the Bush administration may have failed to anticipate when it comes to the possibility of a Russia-China strategic alignment. So joining me on set is Stephen Hadley. The book is called Handoff, the Foreign Policy George W. Bush Passed to Barack Obama. And again, I think, I want to talk about Russia and China first, but it's basically a reference book of the Bush administration's foreign policy and everything they left, every memo sort of like, here you go, to Susan Rice and her team. I think she was the first national security advisor. No, she was
Jim Jones.
No, Jim Jones, that's right, and his team. This was the material you handed off to them, right?
Exactly right. The memos basically said, here's what we found, here was our strategy, here's what we did, and here's what's left to be done, and here are the things that might bite you to the new administration when they came in. We then updated those. The people who wrote the memos 14 years later came back, updated them, and said, what's happened since? What does it say about how we did and how the country has been doing in handling these issues?
And this is the part I found fascinating because, again, it's just sort of, it's what you hope government officials, people like yourself, do with our tax dollars, frankly. It's just, it's a good, transparent way of thinking. So let's talk about lessons learned with the two topics we're on, Russia and China. So let's start with China. You guys left office, Hu Jintao was there, and Xi was the vice premier that most people expected to be the heir apparent. What did the administration think of him then, and what's the look-back memo on that one?
One of the things, if you look at that memo in the book, it's striking how different the China President Bush faced is from the China we see today.
Totally different.
The China then was looking for a benign international environment so they could focus on their own domestic renewal and construction of their society. And it was a China that wanted to be part of the international system rather than overturning it, and wanted a constructive relationship with the United States. So what we tried to do to say, all right, let's see if we can bring China into the international system so they will support it and be part of it. But at the same time, let's hedge our bets. So we tried to strengthen our relations with our local allies, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. We, of course, created a strategic relationship with India, which is now more and more important given China's behavior. And we strengthened our own diplomatic, economic, trade, and military position in the region to create a context which would give incentive for China to come our way, but also give a platform in the event China decided not to. And that, of course, is the platform that the Biden administration is using now with AUKUS and all these other, and the Quad and all the other devices to try to manage this more aggressive and hegemonic China that we face today.
What do you think we missed on Xi? When I say we, the collective American intelligence community on him.
It's hard to know. You know, you never know what a person is going to be as a president until they actually become president. But we clearly misread him. We thought the dominant opinion was that he was going to be an economic reformer and might also be a political reformer. I recall a minority view at the time that, wait a minute, this is a party man first and last. And he is going to use the party to strengthen political control and to strengthen China. And that's turned out to be who he was. In addition, he's much more of an ideologue than we thought, much more quite frankly, a Marxist than we anticipated at the time. He's in some sense a throwback, and it shows you who runs a country matters, because he really took the country in a very different direction than Jiang Zemin or Hu Jintao was taking the country, his two predecessors.
And now, I have to say, that visual moment we got about 3 months ago, when at the Chinese Communist Party meeting, where they escorted Hu Jintao out of the building. I mean, in some ways, it's more striking knowing this now.
There was also always about 4 different factions that were balanced in the Standing Committee of the Politburo. And what she did basically over the last several years was break the back of each of those alternatives so that everybody who's now in the Standing Committee of the Politburo is from the Xi faction and is a Xi man.
All right, when you guys left office, it was a guy named Dmitry Medvedev. And what's interesting here is what you just described about Xi, that he's a party man. The same thing is going through my head with Medvedev, because as president, he made it seem as if he was the reformer, he was the guy you could deal with. Putin's my crazy uncle over here. I'm keeping him in control. And now he certainly looks like a party man, as he's the one doing all the saber rattling.
You know, Medvedev, under the period of the Obama administration, when he was president, made a couple mistakes in terms of his own standing within the Russian people. He went along with the Libya operation by the Europeans, which did not go the way Russia wanted. And I think he ended up damaged, and I think was quite stunned when, rather than being able to run for re-election,
he can get his second term, as Putin basically said no.
Putin basically said, "I'm back as president. You can work for me."
So you think that was a moment of shame for him?
I do, and I think he's now not going to make that mistake again. He's never going to let anybody get to the right of him on these very issues. And I think that's one of the reasons why, as your prior guest said, he has now become the mouthpiece for those who say, don't forget the nuclear capability, and if we're threatened, we'll use it.
Yeah. It's like after George Wallace lost the first time. It sounds like Dmitry Medvedev learned a lesson, and he's decided he's going to stick by
I think that's right.
the party method. Stephen Hadley, again, the handoff, it's a treasure trove for historians, for anybody that cares about these things in foreign policy. I'm so glad you put the project together. SMU, it's with the Bush Library?
The book is a standalone. In addition, there's an online archive that has the transition memos and all the voluminous attachments to them. So if you want to know about Bush foreign policy, get the book, consult the archive.
There you go. Stephen Hadley, nice to see you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.